that. Okay, so here we go. We're talking about applications of exponentials, and this is the main formula. You have the start value here. You have what it's worth when it's all done right there. You have a 1 plus if it's growing or minus if it's shrinking. And then you have a rate over the compounding time, like if it's 12 times a year or 1 time a year. If it's a 1 there, you don't even have to put a 1 there because that's kind of like given. But if it's like 12 times, like monthly, you put a 12 there. And then the last thing is the time goes here. And this is really important. Whatever the time is in, it's going to be the same number as this. So like for instance, let's say I do it in months. Let's say I'm going to do something monthly. Then this should be in months right here. If you have 2 years, you should change it to months and put it there. So whatever this and this should match up with each other. Like if this is monthly, then this should be monthly. If this is yearly down here, then this should be years up here. But don't mix them. Like have one be months and one be years, or you'll get it wrong. You'll find that on the answer key for today's little practice test, the teacher did it wrong on one of them because it's really easy to do. You forget. So I'll show you where that is. But all right, so I want to use this as an example to tell you a little story of true story about what is the famous bald guy who was flying a kite. Ben Franklin, very good. So Ben Franklin was a fixture in his town. He was like he was a big deal for one of the founding fathers of our country and all that stuff. And he considered to be the guy who discovered electricity by with that whole kite, and it gets struck by lightning, and then he almost got killed. And anyway, so with the at the end of his life, he decided before he died that he would try to teach a lesson after he died. And so he took his will and he made a little lesson in there. So when they read his will, they found that he had left all of his money to the city of Philadelphia. And the city of Philadelphia, though, couldn't have his money right away because they'd just take it, spend it, buy a park or something, and it'd be gone. He wanted to teach them a lesson about how powerful compounding was. And also, there's a lot of lessons you could take from this, but you try to figure out what he was trying to teach us. He said, you can have my money after 100 years of it growing in the bank, compounding. Okay? So, in other words, it would be sort of like if your dad passed away and he knew that you had already gone to college, got a good job, and you were going to be okay and you really didn't need any of his money. Your dad says, okay, I'm going to give you this $1 million that I've saved up for my lifetime, but I'm going to not give it to you, and I'm not going to give it to your kids, but I'm going to give it to your kids' kids. Now, why? But it's not that he was trying to be mean to his kids, or in this case, Ben Franklin was not trying to say, I hate all you people right now. I'm not giving it to you. I'm going to give it to somebody 100 years from now. He wanted to show them how it could grow pretty dramatically over time. Because see, time, it's exponential, right? And do you know what an exponential graph kind of looks like? It kind of goes up, right? And it goes up faster and faster, and it gets really steep, right? How do you get to this end part where it's going up really fast? You almost never do get there. Why don't you get there? No, it's not impossible. It's because it needs a lot of this. What's that? A lot of time. See? Normally your money will grow, and then by the time you need it, it's grown some, but it hasn't grown very much. But if you give it a long time, it can grow pretty dramatically. So I'd like you right now, with your calculator, to take and put this equation into your calculator and try to figure out what it will be worth. His estate of, I'm going to go with $2 million, because he was a pretty famous guy. He was an inventor. He owned stuff. Back then, it wouldn't have been $2 million because that would have been a huge amount of money. But in today's dollars, it would be like $2 million bucks. If you let it grow at, we're going to go with 6% interest, because that's kind of in between where stocks would be or where like bank interest would be. For a long period of time, we're talking compounded yearly, once a year, for 100 years. Let's see how much that would be worth. Yes?
How do you change it to like that kind of format? The y equals?
All you need to type in right now on your calculator is this. A 2 with 6, 7 zeros, sorry. And I'll multiply by parentheses. You're just doing this all on like the home screen. 1 plus, and it's not a minus because this is growing, 0.06 to the end parentheses to the 100 equals, and isn't it a really big number? I want you to write that number all the way out on your screen just so you get the idea of how big it is. Like with all of its zeros. It's a good question. First of all, banks had vaults, even way back in the day, and the vaults were big, heavy metal, and so your money wouldn't burn up inside there. But all the bank deposits, I don't know back then, but all the bank deposits nowadays are insured, so that there's no chance of, like the bank burns down and you lose everything.
But don't they only insure like 200,000?
It's a good point. The government insures up to $250,000 per person, though, that's invested in the bank. So what smart rich people do is they spread their money out amongst multiple banks. Because if their bank goes out of business, the worst they can lose is $250,000, and they can do that in multiple banks. You can have like 10 banks.
What if they have billions?
Isn't it? Yes, they have to spread it out. Otherwise, they buy insurance to cover that too. Yes? It's not bad to have it at different banks. It's actually pretty smart to have it at different banks. It is complicated. Your life gets more complicated, but people that have like $1 billion aren't going to complain about how complicated their life is. They're happy they have $1 billion. So they get somebody who is full-time. All they do, like they would hire somebody who 8 hours a day, all they do is manage their money. And, it's not that complicated to have multiple bank accounts and stuff. You just have to be very sure that that person is trustworthy. Yes? It's a lot of money, isn't it? In fact, let's be specific. How big is it? It starts with a what number? 6, comma, 6, 7, or maybe I got the comma in the wrong spot. 6, 7, 8, and then what? 604, and then what? 167. All right. $678 million under this scenario. Okay, you can round it to 679 if you wanted to. All right. And could that have even been $1 billion? Could you have gotten it to $1 billion? What could you have changed about it to make it $1 billion? Yes?
Made it like 200 years or something?
Oh, at 200 years it would easily be that. How about that? But you're right. If we change the time, that would be one way to make it bigger. What else? Yes?
I have a question.
Okay, what's your question?
Wouldn't like the value of the dollar have an effect on it?
That's a very good point. The value of the dollar. So in other words, this might be $678 million, but 100 years from now, isn't a cheeseburger going to cost you like $100? Okay, that's a good point. It's a good point. But it's still a lot of money. You know what I mean? It's $678 million instead of $2 million. So that was a way for Ben Franklin to give a lot more money, but it was money that was going to be 100 years from now. And so, yeah, you have to factor that in. You're right. I would predict that you guys are going to easily, by the time you are old, you will be paying $10 for one of the cheaper cheeseburgers at McDonald's. Yep. Yep. Here's an example why. My mom used to tell me about buying a pop was a nickel, 5 cents. 5 cents for a can of pop. What is it now? 5 cents? Is it even 50 cents? Isn't it more like a buck? Isn't that 20 times as much as it used to be? Okay, so if hamburgers are like 50 cents at McDonald's right now, multiply it by 20, it's not unreasonable that it could be $10 for a hamburger. And that's a cheap hamburger. Because I'm not talking a smash burger, because those are already like $7. They're really good, but... Yes? That's true. You do get paid more when prices go up in general. It's not a guarantee, but the point is, though, if you save your money until someday, that money might not be worth as impressive as it used to be. Like, My dad, I remember him saying that his mom had bought a life insurance policy for him, and it was like when he would die, it would pay out this fairly big amount of money, which was like $1,000. Nowadays, people buy a life insurance policy, they get policies that pay out like $1 million when they die. So the point is that $1,000 used to be a fair amount of money. Now it's like a pretty small amount of money. So yeah, over time, you're absolutely right. The value of the dollar will make a difference. All right, so the next kind that you had to do is solve for the rate. I want you to just write the equation out for this one on your paper. Here's the scenario. You have $5,000 to save for college. And you want that to be able to pay for, just for pride, you want to be able to pay for one of your semesters of college all by yourself. Okay, and so let's say that you want that to grow to be worth $12,000, because that would basically pay for one semester of college. If it's now $5,000, set up the right equation for me to figure out what rate you would need. Assume this is a monthly question. To grow, no, let's not go monthly. I'm sorry, let's go yearly, otherwise you're going to have to do a big calculation to get the years. And let's say that you have 8 years to make it happen, because you're going to be paying for one of your grad school years or whatever. I want this 5,000 to turn into 12,000 over, I'm not writing it in the right spot on purpose, over 8 years. You figure out what rate you would need to make that happen. Remember, don't do it monthly, do it as an annual. Don't know where to put the numbers? I've got the helper up on the board there.
And the compound's yearly?
And it's yearly, yep. And then use the calculator to actually solve this thing. Get it down so that you should be doing some kind of an exponent in the course of this. And what rate would you need? For those of you that were stuck, your 12,000 goes there. 1 plus, I don't know what rate, and I don't have to put over 1. That's just kind of wasting my time, because r divided by 1 is r. And then to the 8. You get that? Nope. If I wanted to compound it monthly, I'd go like this. I did not say to compound it monthly. I said to do it yearly, so like that. All right. So you're going to need a pretty big interest rate to make that work. All right, I'm going to ask people to do different parts of this problem. Have your fingers ready, okay? All right, in the front row, Mrs. T, would you take the 12,000 divided by the 500 and tell me what that comes out to? Maybe you already got it. 0.24 is equal to 1 plus r to the 8th. How do I get rid of the 8 now? It's 12,000 divided by 5,000. Okay, so let's try it again. Who's got that? 2.4. Thank you. Okay, and now we have to get rid of the to the 8th power next. So put it to the 1/8. Good. And do you have that number, Mr. S? Or Mr. B? Yep. Thank you. Equals 1 plus r. And then I'm almost done. I just have to take away the 1. And I have 0.11 equals r. What does that mean? 11%. I need to get 11% on my money to make that happen. Now, does the stock market return 11% on average? No. So you might have to take a guess on a stock that you think is going to go up 11% per year. Now, Apple has been up tremendously. It's gone up from, I could have bought it at $90 a share, and it's now at $600 per share. So, and I could have probably bought 1,000 shares, and so that would have been worth $600,000 right now. All I would have taken is 3 years ago, when the stock market was kind of low, I could have bought Apple at $90 a share, and I could have had something worth $600,000 right now. But, and so could anybody. In fact, if you want to be, like, look back like that, there's a lot of stocks that were really, really cheap You ever guys heard of Siri? It's the same as XM radio. Is that satellite radio? Sirius, yep, satellite radio. I guess you're right. XM and Siri merged, and are they going with Sirius now? Yeah. Okay, so Sirius radio, satellite radio, you could have bought those shares for 8 cents a share. And right now, $2.30 a share. So if you think about the multiplication on that, actually, would you grab your calculator and take 230 and divide by 0.8? How many times, 0.08, sorry. How many times? 28 times your money. So if you would have put in $1,000, you'd have $28,000. If you would have put in $100,000, you'd have $2,800,000, which is $2.8 million. So stocks can make you a lot of money. They can also lose you a lot of money. Give you an example of that. I owned a stock that was at $57 a share, and 2 weeks later, it was worth $5 a share. 2 weeks. It was Bear Stearns. You heard of that one? It's one of the banks that went out of business right before this whole the crash of the stock market. I only, thankfully, I kind of got nervous about it because it went down a little bit after I bought it, and I just was really happy. I got nervous about that one, and I got out of it. I got a little loss. I probably lost a couple $1,000, but nothing like I would have lost, because I got out when it went from like 55 a share down, or 57 a share down to like 55 or 54. But it was just like, I'm thinking, why do I really need this stock? I don't see why I bought it again. So it was going down, and I decided to get out. I could have very easily just forgot about it, and then it would have gone down to like 1/10 of its value. Yes?
It's funny because in Forrest Gump, Dan buys a bunch of stocks.
In a fruit company, right?
Yeah.
Yep, in Forrest Gump they talk about the fruit company, Apple. And if you had bought Apple when Forrest Gump came out, is the irony, Apple when Forrest Gump came out was about $20 a share. Now it's $600. So if you'd have just bought the same stock that was in the movie as the stock that made this guy a ton of money, if you'd have bought it because you saw the movie, you would have made a ton of money. Isn't that interesting? What? Okay, okay. So, yes? Microsoft, yep. Microsoft was another story like this that went up dramatically. So the trick for you guys is to try to figure out what stock right now is out there that's really cheap, because the company's kind of beat down, but it's going to turn around and become a really big player.
Like
I don't know.
natural resources.
Like, what do you think it is? It really depends. It might be gold. Some people think gold is already up a lot, but that it's going to come down. Other people think gold's going to be worth way more than it is right now, because if our money becomes worth nothing, people will say, ooh, at least I got gold, and gold's worth something. And so some people will buy gold. Yes. Gold has been rising a lot over the last like 10 years, but before that, it was kind of like stagnant for a long time, like 20 years it wasn't doing much. And all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, gold has gone up, 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 up. You could have bought gold for like $300 an ounce, and now it's $1,600 an ounce. So, yes.
So isn't next 10 years or something, like water and electricity and natural resources are going to go up a ton?
So if you believe that water and electricity and natural resources like, gas, coal, etc., are going to become more scarce, then there are companies you could buy. But that would help make you money on that. Cool. All right. Well, you never know until afterwards, and then you can look back and say, oh, I really should have bought this. One of the other things you should have bought is land in North Dakota, because what did they find there? Oil. There was a few people in North Dakota that believed that there was oil there, and they went and bought up the rights from all their neighbors. And like the neighbors, let's say that they were having a bad year and they needed some extra money, and they'd say, tell you what, I'll buy your oil rights for like $5,000. And they'd give them their oil rights for their whole farm for like $5,000 or $10,000. And then they didn't know there was oil, or they wouldn't have sold it, right? Everybody thought there was maybe going to be oil, but then people started thinking, nah, it's been like 20 years, they've never found it, it's probably not there. So one or two guys in the whole town bought up everybody's oil rights, and then now that it struck it big, those guys are super rich. They're just getting tons of money every month from the oil companies, because they found tons of oil in North Dakota. Actually, it's kind of more like they figured out how to get to it. They knew there was oil there, but it was trapped in shale, and they finally figured out the technology to get it out of the shale. So anyway, okay, now let's talk about interest rates, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't make a lot of money with their money. They lose a lot of money with their money by interest. Let me give you an example. Let's do an interest problem where you borrow $2,000 because you want to have a Merry Christmas, and you borrow this $2,000, and you don't know what interest rate it is because you just trust this person that you're borrowing it from, or this bank, not to mess with you, but it turns out that they do, because you borrowed it $2,000, and now at the end they want to be paid back $3,000 after 1 year. Then figure out what interest rate you paid. No, this is a growing problem because the amount you owed them was $2,000 and now it's $3,000. If this number is bigger than the other number, then it was a plus. I know it's a bad thing, but it's a plus because it's a loan and your loan amount's going up. Did you get 0.5? I think you're correct. See if we get there, if other people can verify that. Can anybody verify the 0.5? All right, fair number of people. Good. 50%. That's 50% interest. Is that even legal? Yes, it is. The new law in the United States is that they can charge you whatever interest rate they want to as long as they tell you up front what rate it is. It doesn't have to be like in the giant print either. It could be in this fine print, but it has to say somewhere that I'm agreeing to borrow this money at a rate of 50%. In the old days, they didn't allow the interest rates to be that high. The law was that you couldn't have interest rates over 24%. 24 was even really high. It was just awful high. But now they can charge 50%, 75%. There's actually a credit card that charges like 62% interest.
Why would you even get
Why would you get that card? Because those people usually have pretty bad credit and they can't get other cards because they have a history of not paying their bills well. And then if they want to try to get out of that hole and that bad reputation, they have to get one of these credit cards and pay like 62% when their friend borrows money and only pays 10%. So it's kind of a cruel world out there. But I guess some people would say it's a fair world because if those people are bad at paying money back, they shouldn't get money for the same rate as somebody who's always been really good about paying it back. So anyway, you just want to be one of those people that has a good credit rating. It makes a big difference. All right, I'd like you to do one last problem like this. You know what? I don't think we have time, actually. I think I've showed you the idea of how you could use this in the real world, and now I want you to practice. So there's a practice test. It's in Schoology. Go find it and try that practice test, and we will grade that in a moment.